Welcome back to part 5 of our live training session here with our GT500 Mustang. In this tutorial, we're going to be focusing on our cold start as well as drivability off the chassis dyno. So cold starting is always something we do at the very end, making sure that the engine can fire up and run cold. Also taking a look at the period where it transitions from starting to actually coming up to operating temperature, known as our warm-up enrichment, making sure that process is all smooth, everything's going to be idling properly, we're going to have the proper fueling in that situation, and then we need to check how the car is going to actually drive in real-world conditions. It can drive just fine on the dyno, but have problems on the road, so we want to make sure we're thorough with this so we have a car that's going to start and run and drive like stock and also make a ton of additional power. So without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out.
Welcome back to our live training session here with our GT500 Mustang. This tutorial we're going to be focusing on our cold start warm-up process, so I'm on day 2 now with our vehicle, and then we're going to take it off the chassis dyno and check drivability. Mainly what I'm concerned about is ensuring that the fuel trims are consistent in part throttle cruise conditions, and that as we're deselling and returning into idle, that's going to be smooth and we're not going to have any problems. We're also going to be taking a look at our IPC wheel torque errors as we're driving, seeing what those look like after we've rescaled the torque and inverse tables. So there's some things we want to take a look at, but we want to make sure that this final polishing aspect to the calibration is done. So we want to make sure that everything is dialed in as best as possible so that the car starts, drives, runs, part throttle, full throttle, returns to idle like it would from Ford. That's always the goal in trying to calibrate our vehicles properly. Now sometimes we can't achieve that because the parts maybe are causing some issues. There might be some kind of mechanical or electrical problems that are giving us issues while we're calibrating, but if everything is right, we should be able to achieve really OEM-like results, and that's what I'm always after if I'm calibrating. So right now I'm sitting in the vehicle, I have the ignition key powered on, I have my MPVI2 cable plugged into the OBD2 port, plugged into my laptop. The wideband, so this is something to note here, checking our cold start and warm-up process. The wideband that I have here is an AM Uego wideband that's been wired into our ProLink cable on an analog input. That wideband normally would be ran to a 12-volt source that's a key-on 12-volt source to power up the wideband circuit. In this case, I've wired it directly to the battery. Now, I've done this just in a temporary condition so that I'm able to have the heater circuit on the sensor for the wideband itself being able to be online in the wideband reading immediately after I fire off the engine. This is important because we can immediately collect data after a crank and it fires off on a cold engine. Otherwise, we would have to wait 30 to 40 seconds before that wideband heater circuit fully warms up and the sensor comes online. So when we're looking at our cranking and our post-start fuel and our warm-up enrichment, we always want to have that wideband hot and not having to have it warm up over time. That's why I've temporarily wired it to the battery. Now, once I'm done with this, I'm going to return the wiring for the wideband back to a key-on 12-volt source so it doesn't draw down the battery when I shut off the car. So if I shut off the car right now, the wideband's going to run, the heater circuit's going to constantly draw amperage from the battery, and it will kill it very easily in a few hours. So I want to make sure I return that wiring back to stock. But that's one of the aspects here. Let's talk about a few other things within the calibration file to note. When we set up our base map, we set up our closed loop to have a delay for a period of time, seconds after the engine is fired off, so that the OEM primary O2 sensors, the heater circuits, had to come online before the sensor could accurately read. And it takes a bit of time for them to heat up and actually become accurate. We're using the front oxygen sensors for our closed loop operation, and we want our closed loop to be accurate if it's trimming on our short and long-term field trims. Right now we have long-term turned off, but just on the short-term trims, as it's trimming the mixture, we want it having an accurate reading from our primary O2 sensors. So they're not wide bands, they're narrow band sensors, but in this case we want them to be accurate, and we do want to have that delay window. If we put our closed loop on too soon, that can create problems. We can have oscillation problems, we can have essentially the closed loop chasing a bad signal from the O2 sensors because the sensors themselves aren't hot enough. Now, we also went in our closed loop and we set our duty cycle at 100% on our cold engine operation so that the heater duty cycle is going to be maximum output, maximum of amperage put into those heater circuits so that they come online as fast as possible and that they're as accurate as possible. So just some things kind of where we're at. I haven't went in and adjusted anything with any kind of fuel base compensations. There's a table that we can actually add additional fuel if it's lean. We'll find out when it fires off.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.